So the very first limb, as I mentioned, are the yamas. These are your personal observances. These are your observances that relate to the way in which you connect with the world. The yamas. It's a way in which, through their 5 aspects, and there are very many subtle aspects within their 5 aspects, they bring us a sense of grounding, a sense of intimacy with our own self and the world. Not just other people, but all beings. And our relationship to the world. The niyamas. Sort of our personal restraints, our internal relationship with ourselves, just becoming more and more familiar. Right? As we go along, it's almost as if we can clean up our room, then suddenly we can see what the room is, right? So the yamas, we've cleaned it up. The niyamas is like, okay, now I'm going to get into it, right? And they work together beautifully. They're very potent, they're very relatable to each other. And then we remember that we have a body. And that we need to deal with this body, right? In dealing with this body, we approach it through the asanas. And we can have any discussion we want about where these asanas came from, when they were developed, is it really gymnastics, what is going on? But if you have a practice of postures, of placing them in these particular ways, you know that we can access, clean out, become, once again, more intimate with ourselves through this form that we have, and we can take good care of it as well. I find often that asana becomes, again, another place to be competitive, another place to slam ourselves, to go through this whole mental cycle. And as we trace our steps back to the yamas and niyamas, and then re-enter the asanas again and again and again, that we become more kind as we move through these postures. It wakes up vitality. So the asana practice. The next limb is pranayama. Pranayama deals with the whole deal, right? We're born and we're given a certain amount of prana, life force. Some people mistake prana for breath. And granted, we have our prana while we have our breath. But prana is beyond the breath. It is our vital life force. It is what is pulsing through us. It is what animates us. Yeah? And we tend to get congested in certain parts. Our pranic body gets stuck here or stuck there. And so pranayama, yamas are these techniques. Yeah? Pranayama, so where we can move our life force as evenly as possible throughout our body and our system. And it also suggests some restraint as well. At certain times in our life, and maybe all the way through our life, we are spending our prana bucks like crazy, like we have our credit card and we're just swipe, 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 swipe. And off our prana goes, and we're just building up this debt. And I can say, at a certain point, that you recognize, oh, I've been living on some serious credit. And pranayama, whenever you begin it, is a powerful way for sustenance, for sustaining this life force. Again, we don't know how much prana we've been given. We don't know what's in our bank account, in a sense. But not that we're just tossing, we're not in Vegas just throwing our money down. Yeah. Instead, we take our time, we slow the breath down, speed the breath up, we clean the breath out. Many ways in which we can approach pranayama, many practices. So the pranayama practices will come in relationship to the yamas. I'll be introducing some various pranayama practices as well. Pratyahara. Pratyahara is the next limb, and this is, in a sense, the control of the senses, or a way of drawing in slightly from the elephant. Yeah, it goes back to the elephant story. Yeah, so you're walking down, you've got the senses, right? You have the touch, you have the taste, you have the eyes, the smell, what you hear. We're drawn in all of these different places, yeah? Pratyahara is just carrying the flower, yeah? So bringing it in, not being so pulled left and right by our senses. We're not a puppet anymore. To wanting more pleasure through taste or sound, or we become open to what's actually occurring here in life. Pratyahara. Yeah. Asana is a beautiful place to practice this as well. And we'll find these various threads in our living where we can begin to awaken these practices, where they become relevant. Dharana. Dharana is the next limb. The sense of concentration. So you'll see Ganesh back behind me, Durga over this way. You'll see people with malas, japa malas, where you run and recite, and we'll be doing some of those as well, where you run your finger over the beads and you count. Chanting. So all these ways to bring our attention back to the flower. So to me, dharana is, in a sense, finding the flower. Yeah? And there's so many ways in which we can find the flower. We can take a moment with our children and they're talking about their day. And we take a moment and actually go right into their eyes. We look, we stop, we bring our full awareness to what's happening. How often are we carpooling and doing many different things, or running to the grocery store, but also thinking of 13 different things, but bringing your full attention to your life, to what is actually there? Some of the ways in which we begin this are a little more drastic, or a little more full attention, which again is focal points, can be toward a candle, can be to a murti, a representation of the deities. It can be through the japa mala. Many different ways to bring dharana into a practice, right? Where it shows up on a daily rhythm. And then it starts to come into the mess of our life, to the fullness of being human. Yeah, these little ways. We all have it. We all have approached it. We all have had a moment where we're fully concentrated. The next, dhyana. Dhyana is less about the item that we're bringing our attention to, right? We come a little bit, the entrainment outward comes as deep inward, right? There's an even entrainment. It's like often said as meditation. I like to call it sitting and gathering up and then also dissolving my story. Yeah? So ways in which we gather ourselves up, the story around it dissolves. So the simplicity of sitting, giving ourselves time, the freedom, the space to just be still. I'm not saying it's going to be dhyana in its fullest state as we sit down, but where we arrive fully. The subject-object becomes a little less. And then the last, samadhi. Samadhi, the subject-object dissolves completely, right? There's not a focal point. There's not a specific nature to this absolute absorption into the present moment. Absolute absorption into the present moment. No focal point needed. It is simply full presence, both expanded and contracted, right? It's the full spectrum with spanda, right? For the full openness out into the world of all that's happening and all that is within.